Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be making our Greek and Roman project, which is called fresco. Fresco is where you take plaster, this is plaster wrap here, and you add pigment to it. Our pigment is going to be watercolor, to create a artwork that is permanent. This is permanently attached. Normally with watercolor, you could add water to this and it would come back up. But with fresco, it is a part of the plaster. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to get 3 sheets of plaster wrap. 1, 2, 3. You're going to get a tray. We're going to turn our tray over and we're going to take a silver Sharpie and we're going to write our name and our class code on the back. Okay, name and class code. I just did Mr. Reineck's class. You can do a different class, it doesn't matter. Then you're going to turn it over. And all you need in order to get started is some water. We're going to use these little spray bottles here and your plaster wrap. I like to start by putting a couple sprays down first into my tray. And then you're going to take 1 sheet and lay it down and spray it some more. Now you're going to get messy here. Then you're going to take your finger and rub the plaster wrap. It's okay if it comes up a little. You may need some more water. You're rubbing it until it becomes a smooth, flat area. And you see no more holes. And you add as much water as you need in order to make that happen. You don't want too much water. Too much water will make puddles, and we don't want puddles. We just want it to be nice and smooth. Starting to get some puddles over here, but since it's the first layer, it'll be okay. I just have to make sure that I don't add too much more water when I'm adding my second layer. So there is my first layer. Most of the holes are gone. It's nice and smooth. Now I'm going to add my second and third layer, and I'm going to speed up through that. Remember to just keep adding as much water as you need so that there's no puddles. You just want it to be kind of damp and smooth. You don't want too much water. Okay, now I have my 3 layers all nice and smoothed out. There's no holes. Now I need to work quickly to paint. You should have already done a drawing so that you know exactly what you're going to be painting. The reason that we're using spray bottles instead of just dumping water on, because I have more control with the spray bottle than I would by dumping some water on. So I just put a little excess water on it so I have a little bit more time to work. You're going to take a paintbrush, and remember that this is already white, so anything that you want to keep white, like if you wanted to keep a column white, you're going to leave that alone. I'm going to start by adding my ground. Remember, you need to work quickly because this will dry very fast. You only get about 10 minutes of dry time. And you see how it spreads? If you don't want it to spread, you need to make sure that there isn't as much water on your paper or on your plaster. And you can move it a little bit with your finger. You don't have a lot of work time, so you gotta work quickly. Because once this dries, remember, it's permanent. It's never coming up. need to spread it out with your finger a little bit, that's fine. Don't dip your finger into the watercolor, please. But you can dip it once it's already on your paper if you need to dip it to spread it out. I think that looks nice. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown. Before I go into brown, I'm gonna rinse out my brush, because before we go into a different color, we rinse out our brushes. And I just want it to look a little bit more like dirt. Your fingers are already messy, so if you need to use your fingers, that's fine. Alright, I think that looks pretty good for my ground. Rinse out my brush. I'm going to do my tower, my temple first. So I'll dip my brush into black. And you want, when you're doing this, to have a small brush because you can get finer details. This isn't a very big area that we're working with here. So I'm going to use a tiny brush. And see how it's starting to spread? Try to work quickly. It's okay if it spreads a little. I'm just going to fill that in, make it a dark. Okay, I'll rinse out my brush again, and then I'm going to go in and do the columns. Down here. I think I dipped my brush into the wrong color. Whoops. Add some texture to my columns, just a little bit. Now this isn't as black as I want it to be, so I'm going to wait for it to dry just a teensy bit, and then I'll go back over it to make it darker. Okay, that's pretty good. I know that's a temple. You can always go back over it with Sharpie later once it's dry. Now I'm going to add some blue to my sky. You want to do your temple before you do your sky so that you know where you're doing your sky. Remember, you can do a temple, you can do an amphora, you can do just a plain old column. You can do a different scene. It's up to you. You should have done your picture already last week, so you know what you're doing this week. Cleaning up those lines by going over it. I'm going to smooth it out some with my finger. Now the plaster should have dried a little bit, so I'm going to go back over it with some more black just to make it darker. It's not going to be completely pitch black because we're adding black to white. When you add black to white, it becomes gray. I had Sharpie on this, but you can always add Sharpie to it later after it's dry. But there you have it. That's pretty much it. You're gonna let this dry. You're gonna put it on a drying rack by the windows. You can add details to it later if you want with the Sharpie, but it needs to be dry. It needs to be done very quickly so that you have plenty of time for it to dry. When you're finished, you're gonna clean out your brush really well, just like I did there. You'll put the brushes in the trays that stick straight up, the clay trays by the sink, so that they'll dry out. You're gonna wash off your hands, clean up your area, and then you can free draw in your sketchbook when you're finished. I hope you have fun, guys. Thanks.